Hey everybody, welcome to my webinar, my first Zoominar as I have coined it, on healthy living for healthy leaders. I'm gonna just welcome you all. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules, crazy busy world to be on this quick Zoominar. I think you're gonna enjoy it very much. And we are just excited to be a part of this. So I wanna jump right into our topic, healthy living for healthy leaders. And I just want to say, I just love the topic of leadership. I'm leaving the chat open for a little while. So if any of you, I'm going to ask a question of all of you in just a few moments. I'm going to want a chat answer from you, and I'm going to see what you respond. And if you are want to change the size of me, there are 3 different options: big, medium, and tiny. And just so you know, you can also move me around on the screen if you'd like to. I love leaders and I love leadership because leaders make things happen. And the world, the history of the world is a story of leaders, good leaders and bad leaders. This is a picture of me that was taken in Mali, West Africa a few years ago. I've had the privilege of traveling to over 100 countries on all the continents of the world except Antarctica. And in this little village, we were doing some good work in this place. And these little kids were following me. So here's the question. This is not the question for the chat poll, but why do you suppose these little kids are following me? Because I'm a great leader? No, that's not why they're following me. They're following me out of pure curiosity because there's no electricity, there's no internet, there are no cell phones, there's nothing to do in this town except play with soccer balls. And they were following me out of pure curiosity. Perhaps this big white man that's walking through their village has some candy in his pocket. I like to say, if you think you're a leader and nobody is following you, you're only taking a walk. I love the topic of leadership because leaders make things happen, and leaders take people to places they will not take themselves. Now, I want to clarify that I love good leadership, and there's a big difference. So I have a passion to help leaders be more effective. Tonight, I'm going to share with you chapter 1 of my new book, The Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader. Another subtitle that I like to call it is 10 Essential Skills Every New Leader Should Master. People have asked me, Hans, what is different about this book than your bestseller, The Top 10 Mistakes Leaders Make? Well, this is sort of the yin and the yang. That was one side of the coin about what to stop doing, some of the big problems of leadership. This is what you should start doing, especially if you're new into leadership, what you need to do to begin with. And I also, sometimes I think people shouldn't write books till they're at least 50 years old. But now in my 60s, I feel like I have a lot of leadership wisdom to share. And so as I was pondering writing this book, I finished it last year, and I was thinking, what would be the 10 essential skills every new leader should master? Let me just say the word leader. What is leadership? There's so many definitions. When I was getting my doctorate in the field of leadership, I found that there were over 350 definitions of leadership. It can be complicated, but let me just say the key to leadership, the one-word definition I like the best is the word influence. Anytime you influence anyone else towards some kind of action, good or bad, you're leading them. That's the definition of leadership. So let me ask you a question. And here's where I'd like you to use your chat feature. And let me ask you this question. What is a characteristic of the kind of leader you love to follow? What is a characteristic of a kind of leader that you would trust and that you would hitch your wagon to? What are some characteristics of leaders that you really would like to follow? I'm going to make sure my chat feature is on. Yes, it is on. Okay, somebody has said Jedi. You said integrity. Thank you very much. What about the rest of you? What are some really essential characteristics? If this person doesn't have this characteristic, I'm not going to follow them. Nancy, thank you. You said servant heart. Jeremy, balanced. Another way to ask this question is, what really inspires you to follow somebody? How would you answer that? Kathy, you said humility. Thank you. Anybody else? I need to know that they care about me. Thank you, Mary Ann. You know, that's a good one. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Excellent. Gonna wait for a couple more of you to answer. Trustworthy, someone has said. What is a characteristic that just has to be there? Passion and integrity. I like that. Excellent. Anybody else want to answer that question? What is an essential skill that people just really have to have in order for you to just really follow them and just admire them and trust them? Wisdom, somebody else has said. Okay, thank you all. I'm going to turn off the chat now and continue, but thank you for that. So as I was putting together this book and thinking about the 10 essential skills, I realized that the word leadership has 10 letters in it. I thought, well, how cool is that? 10 letters, because if you know me at all, you know I love top 10 lists. So there are 10 letters in the word leadership. And as I was pondering what are the 10 essential skills every new leadership master, I decided that I would come up, if I could, with a word for each of the 10 letters of the word leadership. And that's what I did. And tonight we're going to look at the letter L. This is the book, and if you haven't got it, you may want to pick it up. David C. Cook is my publisher, and they did a gorgeous job on this hardback. I'm very proud of it. Of course, it's available as well in ebook format. But we're going to look at the L. The L in leadership stands for listen. Listening. I say it's like the most important word in a leader's vocabulary. The L in leadership stands for listen. Now, there are a lot of reasons I've discovered why leaders don't listen to their people. For 20 years, I led a big international nonprofit that was scattered all over the globe. We worked in 65 countries of the world, had a lot of people all over the place. Here's some of the reasons that I've observed why people don't listen, why leaders don't listen to their people. Too little time, too many people, too much social media noise, too much pressure, too big of a distance. In my case, I had people 5,000 miles away that I was leading. And some of you, in what you do, you have people on far-flung reaches of the country and the other end of the country or several states away. And sometimes having too much distance makes it hard to listen. And too much knowledge. Now, you may think, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you know, have you ever sat there and listened to somebody tell a story and you're thinking to yourself, I've heard this so many times. I know all about this topic. If you'll be quiet, I will inform you about this topic. Well, that can be a problem. If you're smart and you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, it makes it even harder to listen to people. Well, being a good listener takes a lot more time than being a dictator, but you get much better results. So let me ask you, how do you feel? How do I feel when my leader does not listen to me? How do I feel? What does it make you feel? I get a lot of chances to speak on leadership, and I have a question I love to ask people. Raise your hand if you've worked for a terrible boss. How many people do you suppose would answer that question and raise their hands? Pretty well just about everybody will raise their hand and say that they've worked for a terrible boss. So, and some of you are raising your hand now. I love that. That is great. Raise your hand if you've worked for a terrible boss. I already got 3 of you that raised your hands. Okay, we're getting them. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I think I'm getting a pretty 100% participation in that question. How do you feel when your leader doesn't listen to you? I feel unimportant. I feel marginalized. I feel it's a waste of time trying to say anything to them. I'm invisible. My opinions are not respected. I'm not respected. I have nothing to contribute. Nothing is going to change. I have a good friend, Cameron, who works for a big company. In fact, I tell the story in the first chapter. I don't mention the name of the company, but he works for a big aerospace company in Southern California. And the big boss flew into town to meet with Cameron and his team because there are problems in their production. And this big boss came and spent the morning with them. And would you believe Cameron said, you know, Hans, this guy would not listen to one word we had to say. Everything we complained about the company and about the hierarchy and the people above us that are making our job more difficult. He rationalized and made excuses, and he was completely defensive. And then at the end of that meeting, he packed up his suitcase and flew back to their headquarters. And I asked Cameron, how did you feel? How did you and your team feel about that encounter? And he said, we were so demoralized. We were all ready to quit. And we say, what a big waste of time for that big boss to bother flying in because he did not listen. Well, how do you feel? Let me turn it the other way around. How do you feel when my leader really hears what I have to say? I love this list. When your leader really listens to you, and if you're in leadership, you think about what a difference it makes to this person. I feel important. I feel significant. I actually matter. I'm visible. My opinions are respected. I'm respected. I have something to contribute. Things are going to change. You know, one word that I would say covers this whole list is the word hope. A lot of people get discouraged and they don't have any hope about their bosses. You can't imagine how many people contact me and email me or whatever, and they say, Hans, how do I lead my boss? How do I manage the people above me that are so incompetent and don't listen? It's a tough one, but if they do listen and they do care about you, it gives you hope and you feel respected and it energizes you about working there. Let me just say the other word that L stands for in leadership, not just listen, but learn. I like to say the two most important words in a leader's vocabulary is to listen and to learn. And if you stop learning today, you will stop leading tomorrow. You know, I went to college, I went to grad school, I even got my doctorate. And you know, the day that I went through commencement and I left that institution, my degree was already largely irrelevant and extinct. And whatever we learned years ago doesn't count anymore because of this very quote, one of my absolute favorite quotes. I think I put this quote in every single book that I write. And it's, in times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with the world that no longer exists. So let me ask you a question. Do we live in a changing world? Hello. Sometimes my head spins at the speed of change. I remember one time Donna and I were walking out of the AT&T store with a new cell phone, new smartphone, and Donna said, I wonder how long till this one's obsolete. And I said, yeah, pretty well right now, as soon as we walked out of the store. In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. That's why learning is so important. And you know, my passion is to be the kind of leader that listens to the troops, that listens to our people, and that learns. And you know, part of learning is being vulnerable and saying, you know, I made a mistake. I was wrong. Oh my goodness, will you help me? You know, followers love when leaders say, will you help me? And they mean it. Later in this series, we'll talk about delegation. And one of the keys to great delegation is to really giving people authority with the responsibility. But if the leader says to the follower, will you help me? Oh my gosh, people love following that kind of leader. Well, at the end of every chapter, I have some discussion questions and some applications. If you study this book as a group, this is an awesome list. So this is from pages 39 to 41 at the end of chapter 1 of Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader. Just a couple of tips. Number one, sharpen your listening skills with feedback. I was sharing this with Donna today, and she said, wow, that takes a lot of courage to ask them the 1 to 10 scale question. Here's the question. On a scale of 1 to 10, see if you can get the courage to ask somebody that is, quote, under you on your team this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a listener do you think I am? 10 being great, 1 being terrible. It'll be an interesting thing to see. And by the way, if they give you a score below 5, then the next question is, tell me why you scored me that way. Don't get defensive. Ask them why they gave you that score. Try feeding back to people what they said to you. I learned this skill years ago because sometimes people would say, Hans, you didn't hear what I had to say. So after somebody is sharing some big, heavy information with me, and especially if it's a situation where maybe it's a conflict or a misunderstanding, I will feed back to them what they said to me and say, here's what I heard you say. Number 3, there's no substitute for FaceTime with your team. I've been using the word FaceTime long before Apple came up with it. I really should have registered it as a trademark because I'm a big fan of FaceTime. Now with Zoom and technology, we can do FaceTime. The reason FaceTime is so much important than just being on a phone is because 90% of communication is nonverbal. It's just like email. Email is the worst form of communication, especially if you're trying to resolve conflict. It ain't gonna happen. It makes things worse because there's, you don't see the facial gestures and the emotions that come out of our senses. And number 4, consume a regular diet of resources that can help you grow, like my book and other things. Just the fact that you're listening to this webinar is a sign that you want to learn and you want to grow. Keep on learning. Well, Donna and I love leadership, and we love our life, and we love healthy living. And here's kind of what our mission is: living and leading well for a lifetime and inspiring others to do the same. And so, what do we mean by living well? I want to transition to this topic of living well, leading well and living well. What do I mean by living well? Well, we've learned some things in our journey along our life. We've been married for a long time, and we've had ups and downs in our marriage and in our life and in our health. And we've noticed there are things we can do that decreases our health. There's things we can do that increases our health. What about you? How is your health? How well are you taking care of your health? Sometimes I see people in leadership that are so talented and gifted in their leadership skills, but they don't take care of themselves physically and emotionally and spiritually. That's what I'm getting at. Healthy leadership should also include healthy living. So how well are you taking care of yourself? And here's just the 4 basics that pretty well everybody says is part of being healthy. How would you answer this question? How are you taking care of you? Eating real food, exercise, drinking lots of water, and sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. Well, I have seen 2 startling trends in this world that I want to share with you. We, Donna and I, are concerned about the condition of our food sources. And you need to think about what you're putting into your body. The first thing that we've learned is that environmental toxins are increasing. I love this diagram because it kind of shows the whole cycle of rain and water and food and farms and all the production of our food. What's going into all that food we eat? The more civilized our world becomes, the more toxins there are in our environment. I don't know if that bothers you, but it does bother me as it relates to food. And our food quality is decreasing because of all the preservatives, the flavor enhancers, emulsifiers. In fact, we love to read labels. And if you go and look at food on your shelf at the grocery store, and you start reading the label, and if you can't pronounce a lot of the words that are on there, you probably shouldn't buy that stuff. Less nutrients, pesticides, trans fat, GMO, growth hormones. You know what I've noticed about the grocery store? All the healthy stuff is around the perimeter, and all the man-made processed stuff is in the middle. And so I also wonder, how much time does what you eat spend on a truck? You ever thought about that? A lot of the fruits and vegetables that we eat were picked before they were ripened. They're not vine ripened, so they are green. And when they're going down that highway in that truck, they are not yet ripe. And the best time I've learned for fruits and vegetables to get most of their oomph and most of their goodies is at the very end, vine ripened. So I think most of you are listening. You probably, I don't know, I run into people that don't know, but we should know what we need. The best defense is a good offense. Defense against what? Disease. Do you struggle with disease? Do you struggle with sickness? Do you have family members? Sometimes I see people that struggle with illness, and I happen to have a meal with them, and I watch how they eat, and I think, I think there might be a connection. Even the American Cancer Society and all the medical community is now saying the way to prevent disease is to eat more fruits and vegetables, eating lots of great fruits and vegetables. And by the way, what God gave us to eat in the form it comes in. Again, the middle of the grocery store is full of highly processed food. But you know what you find around the edges? Things that are like in this basket right here. So where do we find it? And how do we make sure we're consuming it with our crazy busy lives? I travel a lot, and sometimes it's so hard to eat well, but you can do it wherever you are. I'm amazed at how many times I'm in meetings and I'm not eating what a lot of people are eating. And this is not about what you should stop eating. It's what you should start eating. And I just think people should really, as the government, and then in my next webinar, I'll be talking about the US government's recommendation for what we should eat every day. But we know it's packed full of lots of fruits and vegetables. So how do we make sure and we are consuming the right stuff? Well, one thing Donna and I are doing is we're growing our own fruit, vegetables. We have a tower garden. In fact, the tower garden is about 15 feet away from me. I'm going to show you a picture of it in just a moment. A tower garden is the future of growing. This is a hydroponic, aeroponic tower where you can grow your own food inside or outside. It grows 30% more, 3 times faster, no dirt, no digging or weeding, and it uses 90% less water. We have had our tower garden, I think this is our 4th season. Here's our picture of our tower garden that's just a few feet away from me. And this year we decided to get grow lights so we could grow it indoors until springtime here in Colorado. And here it is toward the end of May. We've already had Mother's Day. Would you believe it's predicted to snow here the next 2 days? So we love our tower garden, and our grandkids were here over the weekend, and you know, they are 9 years old and twins that are 6, and they love to come down here in the basement and eat this lettuce and this kale and other great stuff right off the tower garden. And then Nama sent them downstairs to harvest stuff for the salad we made. So we grow our own. The other thing we do to bridge the gap is what we call Juice Plus. And this is a complete shake mix and fruits, vegetables, and berries in capsule. Donna and I discovered Juice Plus 16 years ago, and we've been taking it for 16 years. And look at the 45 whole foods, the plant power in this product. And you know, we find that it's about the same cost as a Starbucks cappuccino every day. And how many people do that every day? And how many people go into vitamin stores and spend so much money on stuff that probably isn't really going to help them? But anyway, this is good food, and we've been taking this for a long time. So our passion is inspiring healthy leadership around the world. And we do that by helping people lead well and by helping people live well. Well, my next webinar is going to be on June 7th, and it's going to talk about the E in leadership, emotional intelligence. And the content will be different on the front end of the webinar and on the tail end of the webinar. And I will be sharing about the E in leadership, emotional intelligence, such an important topic when it comes to leadership. Well, if you want to learn more about Hans and my books and my videos, you can go to hansfinzel.com for information about me, and you can find my book wherever books are sold. And if you're interested in this whole issue of healthy living, maybe I've said something that provoked and interested you. And let me just say, Donna and I feel an obligation to share with others this wonderful gift of Juice Plus, which we have found and have been on for 16 years. And I find that I'm in my 60s, super healthy, super full of energy. I have a good friend who's 32 years old. His name is Patrick. He and I are writing a book together. We were just together at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and he says, Hans, I can't believe how much energy you have. Early in the morning till late at night, every day. Most people I know in their 60s have become sloths. And that made me feel good. Well, if you want more information on healthy living, ask the person that shared this webinar with you about how you can find this, because you can't find it in stores. You can only find it from friends like us. So I hope this has been helpful to you, inspiring healthy living around the world, healthy living for healthy leaders. Thank you so much for your time. See you next time on June 7th.